Sab.
Hello there. Welcome to a special edition of the Battle Bros podcast. My name is Mac. This is Adam over here. We're going to talk about some stuff today. It's going to be a great freaking show about it. As you might have guessed, we're talking
Hey.
about St. Patty's Day. Aye. I just messed myself up there, damn it. Oh, crap. What's going on, everybody? How's it going? Yeah. So, I totally messed up the accent there, but whatever. We're going to have fun. Anyway, this is the latest and greatest episode of the Battle Bros podcast.
Hey.
As I said earlier, I am Mac. That's Alamo. Welcome, you beautiful people. What's going on there, Mighty Moo?
I got a little bit of the case of the Count Crudulus, so I'm powering through, buddy. Powering through.
You work on that, man. We're going to be good. So, if you're new to the show, we're just two friends that talk about irreverent stuff that's related to the military, law enforcement, first responder, and veteran communities. Sometimes you know what we're talking about. Other times we're just like, huh? So this might be one of them shows. It's all good. But yeah. So appreciate everybody stopping by to catch us. If you haven't done so already, please go to any one of our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, YouTube, the whole schmear, you name it. Just look up Battle Bros Podcast. You can find us. It's not too hard. Just look for good-looking Spanish dude and guy with the big head that scares children. So, yeah. Awesome sauce. So, what we're going to do now is kind of get into the show, as we mentioned a minute ago. If you didn't catch our show last week, we were talking about the subject of regret and why that's kind of normal, why that can be kind of, something that's not always a bad thing. So feel free to check that out. We are slowly getting caught up on uploading the episodes and stuff to the different platforms where you can catch us: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that great stuff. But we'll get to that at a later time. Again, you can always go on to our YouTube channel and check that out. Those are always available once we go live after the show is concluded. So feel free to check those out. So the one place you can catch all of our shows. Episode 10 is not available on the audio platforms because of the fact it kind of went and got boogered up because we had a power outage when we were recording and the thing kind of disappeared into the ether.
Yep.
So yeah. So if you want to catch episode 10 talking about 9/11, you have to check it on YouTube, and that's all I gotta say about that. So
Yeah.
moving right along.
Wetting the whistle.
Wetting the whistle. I hate when you do that. You like derail my whole train of thought. I'm like, all right, let's keep this on the straight and narrow. Yeah, what I say.
Who else has ADHD?
So, because of the fact that Sunday is my favorite holiday, St. Patrick's Day, we're going to be having a little bit of a conversation about the Irish heritage in America and how it deals with the American Revolution. More importantly, good old Georgie Boy Washington and how they helped him cross the Delaware and do all this other stuff. As my co-host said so eloquently in our show notes, we're going to be talking about you potato munching, bear chugging McBrethren. It's like, that's kind of assed up a little bit, but I'm cool with it. So hey, let's
By the way, those are actually rumors that were made up by the British. Go figure. Yeah, they kind of made up that crap about them being drunks and tater eaters. Even though I'm pretty sure the basic Irishman loves some taters.
It's all good.
But it's all good.
Okay, I gotta stop. Yeah, it's all good. So I'm gonna let Almo kind of take the reins here because this show was his brainchild. So he brought up the fact of talking about all this stuff. So some of this stuff I knew already, some of it I didn't. So I was like, okay. So I'm gonna let Alamo take over and kind of run the show here, and I'm just gonna provide color commentary when necessary. But yeah, so we're gonna talk about how
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day came about. There's actually a decree from General Washington during the winter that they were in the forest. Where was it again? I'm sorry. I'm
I think it was
terrible at
Bunker
this.
Hill. I believe. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive it was Bunker Hill.
Morristown winter. That
Morristown. Morristown.
was, yeah. So they were overlooking. They were, yeah, December 1st of 1779. The miserable army trudged to Morristown, New Jersey, a location chosen for its proximity to British occupied New York. Deciding upon an area known as Jockey Hollow, the surrounding forest was quickly felled to erect 1,000 rudimentary log huts prescribed in neat rows. Here they would winter as conditions continued to deteriorate. The face of the Continental Army had changed since the early days of the war. I know I just said I was going to let you take over, but I'm going to read this part and then I'll let you have it. So, all good.
Yeah.
Quite literally, Irish Presbyterian settlers comprised the largest immigrant group, which was more than 200,000 troops to arrive in the colonies in the 18th century. Not troops, I mean just regular people that immigrated over. As interest in soldiering
Uh,
amongst those of
fun
English
fact,
descent
by the way, bro.
declined. What's it?
Oh, damn it. Sorry. It was actually believed that I was actually listening to a book called How the Irish Won the American Revolution in preparation for this, and basically there were a lot of statistics saying that a lot of that was downplayed, not only because the British, number one, didn't want to admit they were getting their behinds beat by these lowly Irishmen, but number two,
Careful.
because the people that emigrated from British, from Great Britain, that later became the colonists trying to win their independence, kind of also had that same sentiment about the Irish people. So there was kind of like this negative kind of like, oh, well, I'm working with those lowly Irish people, like, ugh, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Um,
That's
what a
okay.
lot of
We're
people
just,
don't,
potato munching, beer chugging bastards of society. It's okay.
what
Go
a
ahead.
lot of people didn't realize is that, I mean, you're probably looking at numbers that were probably easily, excuse me, more so into like the 450s or 500. So, I
Oh yeah,
mean,
it's probably
450,000
not.
to
It's
500.
probably downplayed quite a bit. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'll let you continue. Go ahead.
No, you're good, brother. Uh, yeah. So, an interest in soldiering among those of English descent declined. As interest, excuse me, Irishmen, although considerably less socially desirable, readily volunteered for active duty. As a result, a substantial percentage of the Continental Army claimed Irish ancestry. General Washington and the larger American population was fascinated by the mounting political unrest in Ireland. Not only did Ireland's patriotic struggle against the British crown mirror their own hunger for liberty, but interest in the conflict was also strategic. Trouble for the British just across the Irish Sea was closer to home. It could effectively distract England from her independence bent colonies, dividing not only attention but resources. Washington knew that he had a morale problem on his hands during that vicious Morristown winter,
Yeah.
and threats of mutiny must have been unnerving to the careful and stalwart leader of a freezing ragtag army. The general's decision to announce a holiday for the troops, the only day they had off that winter, was a pragmatic stratagem. A little merriment could go a long way. So, on March 16th, 1780, General Washington penned an order which stated, quote, the general congratulates the army on the very interesting proceedings of the Parliament of Ireland and the inhabitants of that country which have been lately communicated, not only as they appear calculated to remove those heavy and tyrannical oppressions on their trade, but to restore to a brave and generous people their ancient rights and freedom, and by their operations to promote the cause of America. Desirous of impressing upon the minds of the army transactions so important in their nature, the general directs that all fatigue and working parties cease for tomorrow, the 17th, a day held in particular regard by the people of the nation. Ever the commander in chief, Washington then
AKA
set
St.
boundaries
Patty's
for
Day.
aye, St. Patrick's Day. Ever the commander-in-chief, Washington then set boundaries for the day's jollification, ordering that the, quote, celebration of the day will not be attended with the least rioting or disorder, end quote, and that the officers were to stay in their own quarters, with troops remaining within their encampments. There are no records of any bad behavior fallout from this holiday, so the general's wishes were likely heeded. See, big boy rules. Just don't be dumb. The Morristown celebration was not the first organized observance of
Hey.
St. Patrick's Day in the British North American colonies, nor was it the first time March 17th was a date of import to the American Revolution. Now known as Evacuation Day, March 17th, 1776, saw the withdrawal of British troops and loyalists from the Boston harbor after the 11-month siege of the city. General Washington's general orders for the day set the password and countersign for safe re-entry into the city as Boston and St. Patrick, respectively. And what that basically means, it's like we call it nowadays. We call it a challenger password. So you have a word that you challenge with, and then you have a word that you have to say as response to that in order to gain access into an encampment, into a facility, so on and so forth. You don't really just say just the word. You kind of say something where the word's one of many words. You say a sentence or something. But anyway, a day no doubt auspicious for the general, his Irish troops, and the notion of American liberty. So that's pretty cool. I mean, and if you know anything, if you ever get a chance to go up to Virginia, like the DC area of Virginia, and you get the chance to go check out Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's estate up there right on the river. It is absolutely gorgeous, even by standards back then. I mean, his house is not anything. It's very modest. He wasn't a big dude on being flashy and all that stuff. And they don't call all the people that work at Mount Vernon. They don't call him President Washington. They call him the general, because he never really wanted to be the president. He was like, I'm good being a leader, but that's kind of a good sign of leaders, is that they're hesitant to take charge, but they do, and they do so in a very excellent manner. So, but yeah, they call him the general. They actually have a place where you can walk down and see the Mrs. and the general and Mrs. Washington's actual tomb, and it's like, I mean, that's some pretty heavy stuff. Like, you're sitting there, and you're just like, whoa. So, pretty cool stuff. Mount Vernon up in Virginia, it's awesome. You see all the little parts of his estate. He's got quarters for all the workers and stuff there. He was a big, he's kind of like a nerd when it came to like agricultural gizmos and stuff. He's always kind of like looking at new technology and all that kind of crazy stuff. Just absolutely gorgeous. Go in the back of the property, it's just subtle slope all the way down to the river. Fantastic. It's gorgeous, especially I went in November about, oh God, right at like 10 years ago and change, November of 2013, before my daughter was born. Yeah, awesome. The leaves up there were all changing color and all this crazy stuff. It was awesome. Just absolutely fantastic, but pretty cool piece of history that's preserved right there. You really get a chance to see like how things were during that time, how he lived. Beautiful piece of property, even by today's standards. Nothing crazy, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, pretty dope. So, as I mentioned earlier, there was also the point of in 1776 where the British evacuate Boston. So, let's talk a little bit about that. You all right there, buddy?
Yeah. Just had
Gotta take care of something.
Yep.
Exactly. So on March 17th, 1776, British forces are forced to evacuate Boston following General Washington's successful placement of fortifications in the cannons on Dorchester Heights, which overlooks the city from the south. During the evening of March 4th, Major General John Thomas, under orders from Washington, secretly led a force of 800 soldiers and 1,200 workers to Dorchester Heights, which, as they would say up there, Dorchester, to Dorchester Heights, and began fortifying the area. To cover the sound, what are you laughing at? What I just said?
Dorchester,
exactly. I mean, if you watch like the Wahlburgers and stuff, that's how they talk. That's from the area they're from. They're from Dorchester. Anyway, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think your feed's a little bit slow, dude. I hate to say it, but like you're taking a bit to react to what I'm saying, but all good. All
Yeah,
right.
no, it is.
I
It's
mean,
very freaking slow, unfortunately.
I get you. To cover the sound of the construction, American cannons besieging Boston from another location began a nosy bombardment of the outskirts of the city. By the morning, more than a dozen cannons from Fort Ticonderoga had been brought within the Dorchester Heights fortifications. British General Sir William Howe hoped to use the British ships in Boston Harbor to destroy the American position, but a storm set in, giving Americans ample time to complete the fortifications and set up their artillery. Realizing the position was now indefensible, 11,000 British troops and some 1,000 loyalists departed Boston by ship on March 17th, sailing to the safety of Halifax, Nova Scotia. The bloodless liberation of Boston by the Patriots brought an end to a hated 8-year British occupation of the city, known for such infamous events as the Boston Massacre, in which 5 colonists were shot and killed by British soldiers. The British fleet had first entered Boston Harbor on 2 October of 1768, carrying 1,000 soldiers. Having soldiers living among them in tents on Boston Common, a standing army in the 18th century parlance, infuriated Bostonians. For the victory, General Washington, commander of the Continental Army, was presented with the first medal ever awarded by the Continental Congress, which is pretty dope. Again, I mean, the guy was just awesome. I mean, if anybody said anything bad about George Washington, they should just like somebody just come up, just beat him right across the damn face. So, all right, dude, I'm done reading. You go ahead and take over and talk about what you want to talk about. I'm gonna shut up.
Okay, so we know about how numbers were kind of fudged to kind of make things seem a little bit less than they actually were, right? From everything from the Irish involvement down to um, down to who was involved. But one thing that we really aren't taught as much, specifically for those reasons, is just how many just how many freaking Irishmen played significant roles during that time frame. For example, our first guy up on the list being a Mr. Charles Carroll of Carrollton. For anybody that wants to know, it
Is the city named after him?
this guy right here on the Declaration of Independence. He tried to make sure that his signature was as bold as possible. Um, one reason
And why is
being,
that, Elmo?
one reason being was because King George was a very staunch, and I mean staunch, hater of both the Irishman and the Catholic faith. Um, in fact, for a lot of from what I excuse me, from what I gathered through a lot of my research, um, I found that on the part of the Irish themselves, there was a very, very huge portion of them that saw this as kind of like a holy war of their own because they wanted freedom to practice their faith. Um, you had the Irish, the Irishmen, and then you had the Scots Irish, which were the Presbyterians. Every one of them, in all honesty, during that time frame, were seeing, you know, religious practices being taken away from them. They were seeing all types of things being taken away from them on Ireland itself. And when these immigrants from Ireland came to the United States, both the Scots Irish and the Irish themselves, well, when Georgie Boy wanted to, King Georgie Boy wanted to try and, infringe upon that, every single one of them were like, hell no.
So let me interrupt real
So,
quick. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah,
King
go ahead.
George, obviously, with being the King of England, it was the Church of England that was like, that's what you must follow, was the Church of England.
Correct.
Okay.
The Church of England, which was staunchly Protestant. And if you followed any other faith other than, they were Protestant. And if you tried to follow anything other than that, you were automatically ostracized. And you were told to either, let's just put it this way. It's either, oh, You either follow the Church of England or you don't, or you'll have all your rights taken away. Blah 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 blah. During said time frame, also, the Irish ended up being one of the few groups that had a both educational and literature ban imposed on them, which means that most of the people that came over to the to the colonies at the time. I mean, a lot of them were illiterate. That's not to say that every single one of them were, but a very vast majority of them were illiterate because they were not allowed to read, they were not allowed to write, they weren't even allowed to go to school to try and learn. And that was imposed on them by the king.
To put that in context, where have you seen that nowadays? Like in current times? I don't know, Afghanistan. When the Taliban made, books and all that kind of crap illegal. They're a bunch of a-holes.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway,
absolutely.
Continue. Sorry.
Rock on. No, you're good.
I know.
So where do we pick up on this? Where do we find some actual significant people? Right. We covered Charles Carroll. Right. Well, who was Charles Carroll? He was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And it says here, Charles Carroll, known as Charles Carroll of Carrollton, was an American politician, planter, and signatory of the Declaration of Independence. He was the only Catholic signatory of the Declaration and the longest surviving, dying 56 years after its signing. Considered one of the founding fathers of the United States, Carroll was known contemporaneously as the first citizen of the American colonies, a consequence of signing articles in the Maryland Gazette with that pen name. He served as a delegate into the Continental Congress and Confederation Congress. Carroll later served as the first United States Senator from Maryland. Of all of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, Carroll was reputed to be the wealthiest and most formally educated of the group, a product of his 17-year Jesuit education in France. Carroll spoke 5 languages fluently. Born in Annapolis, Maryland, Carroll inherited vast inherited vast agricultural estates and was regarded as the wealthiest man in the American colonies when the American Revolution commenced in 1775. His personal fortune at this time was reputed to be £2,100,000 sterling, the equivalent of 23,284 in 2021. So,
which that's pound sterling, but in American that's $375 million in 2021. Right. So it's like
exactly. Ooh. So this guy,
that's pretty dope.
When he signed his name as boldly as he did on the signature, not a lot of people know this, but that was basically a way of him putting himself in danger. He was literally, because even among the colonists, I mentioned that before, Catholics weren't looked upon very keenly. But it was also, once that document was kind of, dispersed around and sent off, and the British had a chance to see the Declaration of Independence itself, as we can see, Charles Carroll was, very well known in the community as being someone that was, I'm assuming he had, businesses. He did a lot of work around there. He basically put a target on his own back and kind of gave a big, I can't say that right now. So he basically gave a big, that thing to, King George.
Middle finger salute.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we can't do that because, even that is good old YouTube. Anyway, so yeah, I know. Let's just see. But
so this is also interesting. It was, on here. It says, though barred from holding office in Maryland because of his religion, He emerged as a leader of the state's movement for independence. He was a delegate to the Annapolis Convention and was selected as delegate to the Continental Congress in 1776. So, like, you know, I mean, it's
Yes,
not exactly like he's
yes,
not.
and even
He's
still,
still letting that. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
yeah,
It's crazy.
it's crazy to
Oh,
think
it's
like
crazy.
the one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence was not allowed to run for office because he was Catholic. It's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. That and and it's funny too, because I mean, if you think about it this way, obviously people would have known he was Irish, you know, and
With a last
I
name
hate to
like
say it,
Carroll,
but
yeah.
like one other thing about it was there was a very there was a very brutal thing that started taking place in Ireland sometime before the revolution. Um, Essentially, British soldiers would actually go and kill Irish uh, Irish people for clout. I mean, we're talking about men, women, children. They didn't care. They would go and they would take these people out because it was a way of saying, "Oh, look what I did for the crown. I did this for the crown." And it's it's kind of terrible to think about it. Like like you hear about a lot of atrocities committed against a lot of other races and things like that, but one thing that we tend to overlook, and a lot of that comes down to both the American population at the time and also the British population at the time. A lot of it's just, it's not very well reported in history unless you actually go to like, you know, some Irish sources, but it's pretty damn terrible. Like you're going around killing people for sport. I mean, this is not it's absolutely insane to think that that's something that was happening. Um
And to think we toss around that word as being
and
of civilization or civilized, and it's like, are we really? We're killing people for sport and shit, or
yeah.
we're killing them because they believe in a different deity. Like I hate, George
Mhm.
Carlin made a great joke about it one time. He goes, "If you think about all the bloodiest, most brutal wars, all started because of one question: Do you believe in God? No, dead. Do you believe in God? No, dead. Do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe in my God? No, dead. Straight up. I mean, it's funny, but it's
George
like,
Collin was a national treasure.
oh, absolutely. Sorry, sorry. Please.
He was a national
I just
treasure, man.
every time,
Um,
oh, he's a social observationist, man. So good.
yeah. So who else do we have on this list? Well, there was a lot, and I mean a lot. I mean, I was listening to this book, I heard so many names that I wanted to cover, so many people that did so many things for our nation before like at the conception of its, at its conception. It just we wouldn't be able to squeeze it into one show, and I'm so disappointed that we can't do that. But one more guy that we have was a man named Hercules Mulligan. Now, if you know anything about the Sons of Liberty, folks, you would know that the Sons of Liberty was actually, you can you could call it essentially what would be a modern day spy ring, something that's been practiced throughout history, very commonly actually, especially during times like World War II, World War One, and all the way down to our American Revolution. Hercules Mulligan, excuse me, was a man born in Coleraine in the north of Ireland to Hugh and Sarah Mulligan. Hercules Mulligan immigrated with his family to North America in 1746. So he was a young strapping lad when he came here, and he came to New York City. So he technically is a native New Yorker, where he was raised from the age of 6. Mulligan attended King's College, now Columbia University, in New York City. After graduating, Mulligan worked as a clerk for his father's accounting business. He later went on to open a tailoring and hope I don't slaughter this.
Haberdashery.
Haberdashery
Haberdashery. So
business,
I'll tell you what.
catering to
So
wealthy officers of the British Crown.
what that is, haberdashery is basically like, if you ever like go into like a clothing store, basically, like if you want to get like an ascot or like pocket squares, it's kind of like the stuff you do that kind of you do to kind of judge up, your suit and whatnot. So, basically, real quick, haberdasher is a business or person who sells small articles for sewing, dressmaking, and knitting, such as buttons, ribbons, and zippers. In the United States, the term refers instead to a men's clothing store that sells suits, shirts, neckties, men's dress shoes, and other items. But one of the big things you find, like if you find like an ascot, somebody that wears an ascot with a dress shirt, kind of like certain things you kind of do to like dress up a suit a little bit. That's haberdashery. So you're
Yar.
welcome.
Um, so cool fun fact: Mulligan actually was introduced to Alexander Hamilton. For those of you ladies out there who have paid attention to it, I'm talking about the musical. Yeah, he's the very over the top character in the show. I'm trying not to, because obviously Hamilton was a very mixed up show. Obviously, we're not going to go to Hamilton for historical accuracy or nothing, but I mean, it was a good show. But either way, Mulligan was introduced to Hamilton at I guess like a tavern. It says here that shortly after Hamilton arrived in New York by Mulligan's brother Hugh and took him on as a lodger, Mulligan also knew the Krugers, Hamilton's patrons, for whom he had clerked in St. Croix, and helped Hamilton sell their cargo that was to be used for his education and upkeep. Now, getting into Mulligan's service for the Sons of Liberty. In 1765, Mulligan became one of the first colonists to join the Sons of Liberty, a secret society formed to protect the rights of the colonists and to oppose British policies that limited them. In 1770, he clashed with British soldiers in the Battle of Golden Hill. He was a member of the New York Committee of Correspondence, a group that rallied opposition to the British and and coordinated with groups in other colonies through written communications. In August 1775, while under fire from HMS Asia, it's kind of funny that the British would name one of their ships the Asia. He and a New York volunteer militia company called the Coruscants captured 4 British cannons in Corsicans. Dear God. Like I said, the crud, dude. I'm a little. So, captured 4 British cannons in the battery. In 1776, Mulligan and the Sons of Liberty knocked down a statue of King George III in Bowling Green and then melted the lead to cast bullets to use against the British. Mulligan remained in New York as a civilian, unexposed, after George Washington's army was driven out during the New York campaign in summer of 1776. Now that's
cool kind of messed up. You're getting shot at with bullets that were melted down from a statue of your friggin' king.
Of your freaking king.
The crown shot me. It's like that sucks, man. Like, shit.
So there's actually a cool little tidbit in here where it talks about Mulligan's. It says Mulligan's slave Cato was a black patriot who served as a spy together with Mulligan and often acted the role of courier, in part through British-held territory, by exploiting his status as a slave, letting him pass on intelligence to the Continental Army without being detained. In 1778, Cato was granted his freedom in return for his service during the war. He was discharged in 1783 and moved to Plymouth, Massachusetts. And
so, dude, that's
that's some cool freaking crap.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, like you're exploiting this, condition of, being a slave, like just this god awful terrible
Yeah.
situation of being a slave and using that like it. But isn't that like, if you look at a lot of these like historical spies and stuff, and people that were engaged in spycraft, and like, all this type of, what's the word I'm looking for, this deceit and deception, all throughout history, like they kind of have to do that kind of stuff. You're sitting there and you're just like, oh, I'm just, just
Mm-hmm.
nobody, I'm just the slave, all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of crap. It's like,
Well, and see that's
but
the thing. And the cool thing about that though was, here's the thing. I mean, the Irish were treated like indentured servants back then. You know what I mean? They like, I mean, like you're able to live, right? But you're able to live for crap wages, and you're doing crap. You're not allowed to have an education. You're not allowed to do any of the things that basically normal citizens were. And you're in your own country, but the British are over there dictating how your country should run. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, you know, it's almost as if like when, I mean, I'm not speaking for the guy, obviously, but I feel like it's almost as if like Mulligan saw what was happening with the black slaves, and was like, you know what? No, this guy, he's gonna freaking help us out, and if he's gonna fight for us, he's gonna earn his freedom, and when this country becomes a country, he's gonna have, right to property and all that other stuff.
he's a made man. You're not gonna mess with him because he's a made man. All right. He did his part in
And
wartime. He's a made man. I don't know why I turned into an Italian dude, like watching a
I have
mobster
no
movie.
idea why he turned into an Italian dude. But
Ugh.
there's plenty of stories like that, from the American Revolution. The problem is a lot of people don't really talk, from one group of people that was essentially under the freaking foot of Great Britain, to another people that was under the foot of Great Britain at the same time. I almost that's all that's it's a very kind of like almost like heartwarming kind of thing to me. Like it's like, not you kind of have like a shared you have like a shared experience, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I found that absolutely fascinating to see that, like, okay, well, you know this is a people that's, getting crap from the British. This is a people that's getting crap from the British. Guess what? We're now fighting on the same side against the British to earn freedom for, the place that we now call home. And I found that absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Um, there was another thing. Let's see. Do.
Was there anything else you
Ooh,
wanted to add on Mr. Mulligan, or no?
Samuel. No, Mr. Mulligan. Like, and that's the thing, is like, for sake of time, like I wish we could go like in depth, but like,
Right. Okay.
look him up, folks. Look him up, folks. Hercules
Can I
Mulligan,
just? I just
badass dude.
also want to add, like, something they did a lot back then. It's like, you had people like that kind of, if you named them something awesome like freaking Hercules, they kind of lived up to that stuff. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of like that great scene in Patton when he's got
absolutely.
that dog, and he goes, "Your name is Wilhelm," and then the dog like gets barked at by a puddle, by not a puddle, a poodle. I'm sorry, he gets barked at by like a small little poodle, like wimpy looking dog, and the dog, he's like, "Your name is no longer Wilhelm, you're just Willie." It's like, you're not even great name, whatever. Willie.
Look at them, all of them, bastards.
Yeah.
Patton's such a great movie. It's a long movie though.
It's
One
the
more
first
guy that
time
we
I've
were.
ever seen a movie that had an intermission while you were watching it. It's like a 10-minute, 5 or 10 minute
Mhm.
intermission, because it was a long,
Yep.
but it kind of had to be because he was a larger than life dude. I mean, you can't just
Yeah.
condense everything down into like a 2 hour movie.
No,
Can't do it.
sure can't, man.
If anything, go back and make that thing like 2 parts, like 2 3.5 hour movies, you know, or like a 2.5 hour movie and then a 3.5 hour
So
movie.
basically. So One other guy that we were that me and Mac found in kind of like the whole research part was a guy named Samuel Clowney. He actually was a member of Rogers Rangers during the Revolutionary War. He actually fought in the southern part of the conflict down in South Carolina against the British. And the cool thing that I found was the sad part is I found very little documentation about him. But what I did find was basically South Carolina, the state of South Carolina actually ended up sending Samuel's wife a letter, and they penned it being the Southern Campaign's American Revolution pension statements and rosters. And it says here, the state of South Carolina and Union District, on this, the 20th day of December, 1883, personally appeared before Mrs. Elizabeth Clowney, a resident of Union District, South Carolina, age 76, who being duly sworn according to the law on her oath, make the following declaration in order to obtain the benefit of the provision made by the Act of Congress passed July 7th, 1883, entitled An Act Granting Half Pay and Pensions to Certain Widows. So essentially what a lot of people, if anybody's wondering what that means, it means essentially Samuel Clowney was actually a rifleman. And there's actually they actually were a very small portion of the Revolutionary Army. They were more so the guerrillas, if you will, during that time frame. And what they had, instead of muskets, they actually had rifles. Now, granted, obviously these are going to be breech load. They're going to load the same way as any other musket. But the cool thing about these rifles is that they were far more accurate because of the rifling inside of the barrel. So instead of when you fire, all of a sudden your shot goes and it just, kind of tumbles all over the place. You have a rifle, which since it has a rifle barrel, you're going to be able to fire way more accurately. And Rogers Rangers were all riflemen, which is a really, really cool fact. A lot of people didn't know that rifles actually existed back then. They were a lot more rare. I believe it was because they were mainly for hunting. I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I think it was because they were actually
smooth bore muskets. Most of them were smooth bore muskets. I mean, they just kind of go everywhere. Whereas by rifle rounds, you actually breech load those like the trapdoor, pop them in that way, load them, and have the rifling to actually stabilize the round as it goes. It makes it a lot more accurate as it goes. And all that kind of stuff.
Which was cool.
Science fact. Science! Learn something, people! Damn! Anyway.
Remember the science! So, essentially, what the state of South Carolina is saying here is, hey, no worries. Hey, your husband served South Carolina honorably, and we know he passed away. He did his job very well, and we want to give compensation. We want to give his compensation to you, considering that he did such a great job. It goes on to say, and this is the coolest freaking part. I would love to read the entire letter, but I don't know if we'd have time.
No, we're not gonna have time.
Actually, you know what? We'll go a little bit. Damn. So one cool little thing that was in here. It says that the declaration personally State of South Carolina Union District personally appeared Christopher Brandon, the soldier of the Revolution, who being sworn upon Mrs. Elizabeth Clowney's application for a pension under the law of the United States, 7th of July, 1838, the declarant states that he knew and was well acquainted with Samuel Clowney during the Revolutionary War. that he believes Samuel Clowney was in the service previous to the fall of Charleston, March 1780, and after that time, he knows he was regularly in the service till the close of the war, whenever there was a call or it was necessary. The deponent was with him at the excuse me, at the Battle of Cowpens, where he was engaged on picket guard and made a very narrow escape from the enemy. 17th of January, 1781. The deponent thinks Samuel Clowney was at the Battle of Black Stocks. It was reported at the time in the deponent does verily believe that the said Samuel Clowney succeeded in capturing alone and detaining as prisoners 5 Tories until his friends who were at some distance came to his assistance, displaying on that occasion much of that heroism which distinguished citizens and soldiers of South Carolina and her struggles with the Tories and British in the War of the Revolution. One fun little fact about that, excuse me, is Mr. Clowney, being the Catholic Irishman of faith that he was, had a little something to say when his men caught up to him. And by far, this is probably I'm just gonna go out and say it. One of the most badass things that you could like somebody could say that's a faith. When they literally caught up to him, and this is something that I learned during the research and while listening to the book. When his compatriots caught up to him, they asked him, Samuel, okay, you caught 5 men. How did you do this? Samuel decided to say, "May it please your honor be my faith. I surrounded them." Okay. By himself, captured 5 guys, and he answered in the most Irish Catholic fucking way. Oh, I did it. The most Irish Catholic way he could have. God, may it please your honor be my faith. I surrounded him. It sounds like, what? What? That's like one of the best freaking things I think I've ever heard. Like it's amazing because it's something that happened, and you think about these guys, again, they're fighting, like, the Irish that lived here in the country back then. Again, we're looking at probably 400 to 500,000 people. And this is not all men, obviously. This is some women, some children. You think about the fact that, they left a country where they were being systematically oppressed by by the British Crown. And when they arrived here in the colonies, if you think about it, really, I believe George Washington's ranks, if I remember correctly, his numbers for George Washington's ranks, a lot of people don't like to admit it. There's a lot of like kind of infighting again amongst historians. From a lot of the research that I was doing, there's a lot of infighting from between the historians as to just exactly how many Irish served, whether it's the Scots Irish or the or just the Irishmen from like the rest of the country. Because the Scott Irish, I believe they were from the northern part of the country, and then the Irish that we think of, the Irish Catholics, were kind of like the rest of the country. If I remember correctly, some of them said that they only made up like a quarter, but the realistic numbers that a lot of people were coming up with after they were doing like, after they kind of looked up like report numbers in the libraries of Congress and all this other stuff, they're thinking that it was probably more of a third of Washington's army was Irish, more like a third, sometimes maybe even closer to like half of Washington's army was all Irish. And the reason being, the reason they filled his ranks so, I guess, fervently, if you will, was because they saw a need, and they saw essentially essentially the same thing that was going on in their homeland. They saw it starting to happen in the new colonies, and they were just not having it. They just were not having it. It's like, look, we were dealing with it over here. Now we're 3,000 miles away from our island, and you're trying to freaking do it here. Nope. So that led for them to fill Washington's ranks so hard, and it was just, it's honestly probably one of the coolest freaking things I've ever heard. And at a certain point, um the Irish actually, like the Irish community of I think it was Mecklenburg County. I'm actually pulling up the document here. In North Carolina, they ended up calling this the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence.
Let me interject real quick there, dude.
And
This is probably the single most like fascinating piece of information I read as part of this whole research for this whole episode. It's like I had no idea this was a thing. You know, reading about the whole history and of all this, and I was just like, whoa, like this is crazy. Never heard of this. And it's like, oh, it's interesting. So continue.
No worries. What's fascinating about this is, well, number one, colonists and British included, nobody expected a group of Irishmen from which I'm just going to come out here and say it. Mecklenburg County, if I remember correctly, Mecklenburg County was probably the most Irish populous county in North Carolina, if not probably had the most Irish in it. Nobody expected people that they thought were illiterate, people that where they thought were lower than them, to come up with something so galvanizing. It says here that the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence is the name given to a document that was allegedly produced on May the 20th, 1775. Now, think about that date. When was our actual Declaration of Independence ratified? July 4th, 1776. So almost a full year. As a matter of fact, probably a year and 2 months before our nation's like founding document was even put out. The Irish of Mecklenburg County penned their own, saying we are not going to take it anymore. And it goes on to say, when the residents of Mecklenburg County declared themselves free and independent people, the so-called declaration did not surface until 1819. They hid that document for 44 years because they refused to believe that people they thought were ignoramuses would be able to come up with something so, again, so just galvanizing and just it's crazy to think of how and where it ended up. It goes on to say, the so-called declaration did not, or excuse me, when it was published in the Raleigh Register at the behest of Senator Nathaniel Macon, also an Irishman, go figure, the original document was supposedly destroyed in a fire in 1800. The published text was reconstructed from memory by John McNitt Alexander and given to Macon by his son, William Alexander. William Polk, the son of the organizer of the Charlotte meeting, gathered testimony from several elderly men who claimed to have been present. Mecklenburg's immediately started celebrating the date. The authenticity of the document was not seriously questioned until the posthumous public. Huh?
The people from it are called Mecklenburger. Yeah, let me get a Mecklenburger with some pickles on the side. I think it's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Mecklenburger.
It said that the authenticity of the document, the Mecklenburgers. The authenticity of the document was not seriously questioned until the posthumous publication of the works of Thomas Jefferson in 1829. In a letter in a letter of July 9th, 1819 to John Adams, Jefferson dismissed the Mecklenburg Declaration as a hoax. Who was John Adams, for anybody's do you remember who John Adams was?
He was a president.
Mm-hmm. The North Carolina Register, and I believe he was also a Protestant who was not Irish, and yeah.
Oh, that makes a little more sense now.
Yeah. Yeah. The North Carolina legislature in 1830 to 1831 was so aroused by this development, that it established a committee to investigate. As committee chairman, Thomas G. Polk organized the 50th anniversary celebration of the Mecklenburg Declaration. It is not surprising that his committee gathered evidence to support the contention that the declaration was authentic. It actually it goes on to, like, I wish I could read the whole article, but it goes on at the end. It says the Mecklenburg Declaration, a product of legend and patriotic sentiment, most certainly never existed. However, the Mecklenburg resolves were a very real and bold set of anti-British resolutions adopted by Mecklenburg County residents on May 31st, 1775. A full year before the Declaration of Independence was penned at Philadelphia by the Continental Congress. The Mecklenburg resolves deny the authority of Parliament over the colonies and set up basic tenets of governing. Now, another little fun fact. The Irish, even though their government was very kind of pushed over by the British, were a highly democratic, democratic people. So if you ask me, the way their government was set up, it was kind of with democratic policies and things like that. It's no surprise to me that something like this would be written up. Now, again, my thing is, you have witnesses, multiple witnesses that say they were there when the document was penned. It's kind of one of those things that historians don't want to admit that something like that was. I think of it like this. If something like that was genuinely written almost a year and 2 months before our actual Declaration of Independence was ratified, I think these historians think that it will take away from our founding documents. I don't think so. I beg to differ. Yeah. I beg to differ. I think a lot of historians need to get off their high horse and stop being pansies about it and accept that, look, there's so many things in history that have been repeated over time. A founding document,
or or changed.
I mean, dude, like we're we're not the only ones who've penned a founding document. Now, the way our founding document was penned is specifically unique. Yes. However, other documents have been penned before that are similar in nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence, I think, probably is one of those that, for reasons of it probably being very close to what we would have, you know, what we would think our own founding document is probably why they don't, you know, let it be talked about as much. Um,
Well, that and probably the fact too that there's
and
not a
it's
lot of
funny
people
because
that
like
heard of
there's
it
actually
because I've never heard of it until we started talking and doing research on this show. So it's like they just don't know. But it just goes to show you like what you don't know what you don't know.
mhm, yeah, and I think I think it's a damn shame. You know, I think it's a damn shame. I think I think more history needs to be talked about it. You know, or I think it needs to be talked about a little bit more often. How, you know, how much the certain, you know, people groups contributed to making this country what it is. You know what I mean? And
For sure.
honestly, specifically speaking, I'm gonna be honest. The Irish really don't get. They really kind of got like kind of a stiff deal on the whole thing. They really don't get a lot of recognition for how much they were involved in the American Revolution. And
Yep.
again, a lot of that comes down to the people at the time fudging the numbers, fudging everything to because they refused to kind of, if you would say, work with those dirty Irishmen, you know, or work with those ignorant Irishmen that, you know what I'm saying? It was,
Those ignorant Greeks.
or excuse me, as they would say back then, those ignorant patties. Yeah.
Not always. Did your light just turn on?
Yeah.
I usually said mix just because
Yeah, I
all
know.
of the
Weird.
names had MC in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Back then, they would have
so
been called patties. And it
either
just,
or.
yeah, go ahead.
I've heard both. So what there was one book that you cited that I kind of wanted you to tell everybody what the name of it was just so they can look it up because it is available for like, the Audible platforms and like, places you can go and have like books read to you and whatnot. Tell them the name of that book that you primarily cited as your source for the research for this show topic.
How the Irish won the American Revolution. And honestly, I feel like it was a very eye-opening book, for one specific reason. Um, you know, because into just how much of a shared experience, you know, the Irish actually had with a lot of, you know, people groups, like say like the Hispanics and the blacks and things like that, as you know, throughout history. You Because you would never like, because here's the thing: Irish are white, and it's, you would never think like, oh well, this, that, and the other. But here's the thing: the British saw the Irish as an inferior race. They saw themselves as superior to the Irish.
True
They didn't
story.
even consider the Irish to be like them. They considered the Irish to be an inferior race. There's even a British general. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, who actually said something to the nature of like that race of Irishmen, whatever, something like they were considered a lowly race compared to the British, kind of like how the British did a lot of things, and I am like man, like I feel for that, because
Yeah.
it's I don't know, man. It just when you think about stuff like that, like and just how like there's more that like joins us together than there is that separates us, and we need to kind of get back to that again. Like for example,
Sure.
42 million people are in slavery right now. Okay, 42 million people. That's more than any time in history. I think the highest number during I think like during the slave trade back in like the 19th century, I think it was closer to like 2 million. 42 million people are in slavery right now. That's not including, or I should say, that's including the unfortunate part, sex slaves, right? 42 million people now. That's more than any time in history. And that's something that needs to be addressed. You know, at the end of the day, we have more of a shared experience than anybody realizes. And I feel that the biggest thing that we could get from this is that there's more that brings us together than there is anything that divides us. And I feel like that's why talking about this was so relevant, and why it was why I felt like it was so interesting and why it needed to be talked about.
Yeah. No, for
And
sure. I mean,
you know,
this
just
was
saying.
probably one
That's
of the
just me.
more no, and listen, I was pretty excited about talking about this, obviously, because I'm from an Irish background, but at the same time, like, anytime there's like a bunch of historical significance, I'm a big history nerd, so I'm like, yeah, let's do this. This is absolutely cool. But just the few articles that we had, and there's like you said, this could easily be a two, even a three show, conversation topic where we just go stretch and stretch and stretch and just talk about all kind of different things under the sun. You know,
Absolutely.
it could very easily turn into that kind of thing. But for all the stuff that we did, that we read about and then looked up and whatnot, it's like that's just scratching the surface, and you're just like, holy crap, it's like history is such a fun thing, and especially like something like this, St. Patty's Day, but like then you get into why it's special and all the kind of stuff, especially like even okay, so listen, like just kind of like going a little bit off topic here, going back, kind of circling back around to George Washington. Like a lot of people like kind of know, yes, he's the father of the nation, being the first president and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of other things that he was involved with that are just kind of freaking fantastic. There's a place up in DC called it's either in DC or I think it's Alexandria, called Gadsby's Tavern, and then there's some steps out front, and there's a sign that says, from these steps General Washington held his last military review where he watched the parade go by, and he also gave his last military order. So it's like, I mean, that was in 1799 when he passed away, I believe. But it's just like and especially going to places like, you know, DC, like going up there and seeing some of these sites,
Yeah. It's crazy too,
and
because
that's absolutely. Go ahead.
well, no,
There's
I was
such
gonna
a
say
delay, dude. I'm
Washington.
sorry, man. There's just such a delay between
If you
you and I
think about
talking.
it,
It's
like,
just like,
yeah, I can't wait to change
that's
out my internet.
not on you.
Um,
Just but say what you're gonna say.
well, no, I was saying like in the relative scheme of things, it makes you think like Washington wasn't very old when he died. If that's the case,
I don't think so. No, I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Because like some of these guys from the Revolution, I mean, they were like some of these guys that passed away after the Revolution. Some of these guys were like in their 90s. Like Benjamin Franklin, I think he died at like 91, didn't he?
Something like that. George Washington was only 67 years old when he passed away. Passed away December 14th, 1799, aged 67 at Mount Vernon. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, damn. I was gonna say it's probably from like poor dental hygiene or something, like maybe some congenital heart disease or some shit.
Well, I'm looking right here. It says on December 12th, 1799, Washington inspected his farms on horseback. He returned home late and had guests for dinner, sitting down for the meal without changing his damp clothes from the inclement weather of the day. He had a sore throat the next day, but was well enough to mark trees for cutting. That evening, Washington complained of chest congestion. The next morning, however, he awoke with an inflamed throat and difficulty breathing. He ordered a state overseer, George Rawlins, to remove nearly a pint of his blood. Bloodletting was a common practice at the time. His family summoned doctors James Craik, Gustavus Richard Brown, and Elisha C. Dick. A fourth doctor, William Thornton, arrived some hours after Washington died. Brown initially believed that Washington had quinsy, which is peritonsiliar. It was like a peritonsiliar abscess, which they showed a picture just now.
Is that like awful. A form?
It's like basically really? like a sore inside your throat, which is just pretty bad. Dick thought the condition was a more serious, violent inflammation of the throat, but they proposed to do a tracheotomy, but disapproved. So yeah,
tracheotomies were performed even back then.
Oh yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like it's insane. I mean, like just all like especially, and I'll tell you, man, that was one of the coolest things was going up there to his house, his estate at Mount Vernon, and like it's been kept the same pretty much ever since. You know, they've kept it the way it is. And like you can go in there and like this is a handrail, the original handrail that George Washington installed himself. You're like, I just touched history. Oh my god, I'm never watching this hand. Oh my god, that's cool. You know, it's awesome. It's dope, man. It's so cool to go up there and just see history, like living history. But it's insane. It is just such a gorgeous piece of property up there, man. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Other than that, man, I mean, honestly, that's
awesome.
That's our show. Like, again, there was just so many tidbits of information. Like, I have like notes upon notes upon notes of just things that I wrote down so freaking much because there was just so much stuff to absorb, and I was just like, oh my god, like what do I talk about? Like, I think I touched on maybe a quarter of what I wanted to touch on, honestly, in just this episode. Because honestly, this would probably go on to be like something like a 3-hour conversation. Like it's cool. It's cool because I mean, this is history, man. This is stuff that happened. But also in a sense, it's kind of stuff excuse me, to a certain degree, like it's kind of messed up thinking about, you know, because you would never think, you know, that the Irish would have been mistreated, like, you know what I mean, considering, but like hell yeah, man. And like if you look back, and like the Irish have been treated like crap for like years and years, like the thing about the beer chugging and the and all that other stuff, you know. I mean, I said it as kind of to be facetious, but it's something that the Brits made up to kind of make them seem dumb and like just violent and all this other crap, and it just really was never the case. It really wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
um Especially from what the historical record says. It just and you would never and it's stuff like this that unless it's talked about you would never really know about it. And
Yep.
I'm just incredibly grateful and incredibly happy that we could talk about it on the show, because
For sure.
there are some things that historically speaking are not talked about, and they need to be talked about. you know and
I will say this.
I got another brainchild as well coming up, covering the Borinquen,
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah,
65th
dude.
Infantry
Yeah.
Regiment.
Yeah. That'd be dope. I'll say
So
this though, man, just to kind of to give it a little bit of extra, perception. It's like Patty's Day to me is one of those holidays. Like, it's kind of fun because everybody wants to dress up like a leprechaun. It's one of those holidays where people like go crazy and they dress up in their green and their shamrocks and their clovers and all that stuff. Like driving for Uber, responsible people would call an Uber because they go out drinking and stuff. But like, it's so funny, especially in Tampa where I live. Like, especially like a certain age demographic. And I'm not saying this to pick on anybody, but it is kind of something that I've observed. It's like Patty's Day and Cinco de Mayo. It's like, let's just use this as a reason to just get annihilated. No, like
get
freaking learn
sloshed.
about the history behind these damn freaking learn about the history behind these
Remember
days
where
and why they're
it
important.
comes from. Yeah, remember where it
Exactly.
comes from, man. Like, I mean, not to be like kind of on the nose, but I mean, a lot of Irish put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into helping win the War of the Revolution, so that there even was a St. Patty's Day. I mean, like Washington himself ended up like instituting it, like right after the British were forced out. And it's it's something that needs to be it's something that genuinely needs to be remembered. Like, remember, how about instead of just using it as another day to be sloshed, how about using it as a day to remember contributions of a people just like any one of us, all flawed, but at the same time met insurmountable odds, faced an enemy that was much more well equipped, much better prepared, and I mean, I hate to say it, but much better educated at the time, but still was able to take that enemy down and force them out of the country that they chose to make their home after they immigrated here. Remember that we all share that same like fighting spirit. It doesn't matter, where you come from, where we're all a people going into essentially, how do I say this? We're all a people going, I guess, going
Right.
to the grave. Huh?
I'm so sorry. I hit a button on something. I moved the mouse.
I noticed you fell off. Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going, no!
but, but like, just, we're all going the same direction, guys. We're all going the same direction. And we all, as Americans, have a common goal. That's to do better, be better, and to love and protect those we love.
And
You
make it
know,
better for those that come after us.
exactly.
Yeah.
That, I think, is the biggest thing. That is the biggest takeaway from this. You got a prayer you wanted to say, right? or what you call it?
I'm going to say it at the end. Yeah, we'll close out the show, and then I'll say that as the last thing that we do before we go. So, did you have anything else you want to add before I start closing this out, there, dude?
No, I think I'm good, man. I love
Cool.
history and I love to share it, and I look forward to doing it a little bit more later.
Thank you for sticking with us, folks, while we rambled on for an hour and change about this stuff because yeah, there's a lot to cover, but we appreciate you hanging out with us. So, as we talk about at the end of every show, this show came about because of a dear friend of ours that we lost way too early. A good guy by the name of John Rowan, who an Irishman. So it's like, yeah, you know,
Mhm.
absolutely. He would love this one. He would absolutely love this one. He's like, yeah, Irishman, yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
nice. You
Um,
guys talking about Irishmen, huh? Let's
yeah.
have a beer afterwards.
But John and I worked with Alamo and myself, and good dude, funny as hell. Unfortunately, kind of solved a temporary problem with a permanent solution. And that's an absolute shame because he's a guy that should be here telling his story and just laughing it up as much as he can. So,
Yeah.
in the process of coming up with the idea for this show, Alamo approached me about doing a podcast, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know crap about it. He's like, dude, they put a monkey in space. Like, can't be that hard. I'm like, facts, true facts. So we're sitting here and we find out that unfortunately, John's no longer with us. And for me, that was kind of like a dude, hey, I'm in. Like that's the catalyst that I need to to get this going. So in the process of kind of establishing what the show's going to be, what it's going to look like, what it's going to be about, what our identity is, we came up with the Bros Code. So Bros Code is something you can remember for easy tenets to um, put the banner up, Alamo.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah,
Haha.
yeah. Put the banner, up, dude. So the Bros Code, like I was saying, is four tenets you can
Jesus.
do. You can remember just to kind of, especially on those days that are hard. Just remember those four things, and it'll keep you here and keep you around and keep you in the fight. Okay, so first one being be tenacious. Just like the general, going out there and encamping those guys in harsh weather, keeping their spirits up by saying, "Hey, we're gonna have a celebration for the enlisted guys. Officers, stay in your damn hooches. Don't come outside. Shut up. Don't want to hear it." That's tenacity. It's like, yeah, we're gonna let all these guys have their day of rest and relaxation and partying and all that good stuff. But no matter what you do in life, do it to the utmost of your ability. That's the reason that George Washington is considered one of the preeminent leaders in and founding fathers of our great nation, is because he just, kind of took the initiative and was tenacious. So we're
Mhm.
gonna travel across a frozen river on Christmas Day to kill you. And they did. Absolutely. So no matter what you do in life, whether it's being a parent, being a soldier, being a leader, whatever the case may be tenacious. Okay. So be tenacious. R, refuse to surrender. I'm sure there were probably plenty of times during that campaign that Washington said, "Hey boys, pack it up. We're going back. We're good. Pack up the stuff. Let's go back to the big house."
Some
They didn't. They stayed
significant
there.
losses.
Some significant losses. So they could have very easily packed in, but they said no. We're fighting for something better than ourselves. For the Irish, that were part of his Continental Army. They were fighting for independence for not only for their new nation, but to show the British that they belong to their old nation. That they're like, hey, we're not going to go without a fight and just go take this laying down. We're gonna be some real stiff bastards and say, hey, kind of thing. So no matter what happens, refuse to surrender. There's going to be all kind of things that happen. Just don't let it give up. Okay, don't give up. Keep going, fighting on. So, obliterate your obstacles. Like we said earlier, you know, um, they were able to get 14 cannons up on the Overlook to get the British out of Boston Harbor after an 8 months 11
Damn right.
months of being on the ships and stuff, and then 8 years of them being inside the city
Yeah.
of New York and stuff. So I'm probably messing those facts up. I'm sorry, but no matter what the obstacles were, they just didn't. They didn't have any supplies and weren't getting paid. Logistical issues. They didn't have anything, but they just kept going on. And they said, "No, we're not going to let this beat us." Life is going to throw challenges at you sometimes. Um, Sometimes you're just not having a good day. You're feeling down. Some days you have to, go around the different obstacles in life, whether they be physical, mental, emotional, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you have to circumnavigate those obstacles by going around the base of the wall, digging under a wall. Sometimes you got to blow the wall up with some C4 and Bangalores. And sometimes you might have to back an armored vehicle into the thing. Not judging, just saying. So, yeah, no matter what happens, obliterate your obstacles and continue on till you hit the OBJ, you hit the X, and you accomplish the mission. Okay. Last and certainly not least, S. Seek out help in a time of need. As you mentioned with John, John unfortunately chose to solve a temporary problem with a permanent solution. And that is very tragic because John is somebody worth knowing. And, it's awful that this statistic is still a thing. This is on average a number of military veterans that commit suicide every day. It's 22 too many. But even when you know one of those people, that hits worse. And when you find out that somebody that one of those 22 is somebody it's just like, it sucks. I mean, Alamo can tell you he's had, I believe, since he's been out 5 or 6, I think.
About 5.
Yeah. So there's been 5 people that he's served with and known that have, kind of gone down the same path. And it's unfortunate. And, you don't ever have to go through that kind of stuff alone. I mean, there's a lot of, bravado and machismo about guys that serve in the Army and serve in the military. And they're just like, I don't need help. I can figure it out on my own. Well, sometimes you can't. And guess what? That's okay. All right. There are options out there. You have resources for you that you can utilize. You have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you ever feel like you're going down that road where you're like, I just need to end it all, and I need to stop suffering. Okay, I get where you're coming from, but there are ways to not suffer that aren't that permanent, where you can improve your quality of life and all that kind of stuff. If you ever feel like you're going to hurt yourself, you can always call the hotline. It's 1-800-273-8255, which also spells the word talk. 1-800-273-TALK, talk. You can also dial 988. That's 988. And the thing about those two numbers is they're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With the 988 number, you can dial that from a digital cellular device, and you can use it to text and talk to somebody, some kind of person at the hotline, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is great because it used to only be where you can only call. And to be fair, we don't live in a society that calls all the time. We text a lot and do all that kind of stuff. We got Space Invader thumbs and all that kind of crazy shit. So
leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation too.
Yeah. But at the same time, and I mean, like I was telling you, you don't have to go through things alone. I know if I ever run into a spot, I can call this guy right here, and I've done that, and he knows he can call me, and he's done that as well. Regardless of what that person or that support chain looks like, whether it's somebody you served with, a family member, a relative, a trusted confidant that you can talk to about things, a coworker. Somebody, there's somebody out there. We are social creatures by evolution. We have these, bonds with others. We don't do as well in solitary confinement as we do in being amongst others of our own type. So that being said, don't try to go through this shit alone. Okay. It's not worth it. It doesn't end well. Seek out help when you need it. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to let Alamo finish this out, and then I'm going to add one last thing, and then we're going to wrap this up. So, Alamo, if you would, do your piece, and then we'll get the hell out of here.
If you would like to catch us on the social medias, as always, folks, number one, before I even cover the social media stuff, if you guys haven't already, make sure you hit the like, share, and subscribe button, and comment. Please comment. Make YouTube recognize us. commenting nowadays, especially on YouTube, especially on podcasts, is probably one of the best ways you could get us recognized and get us a little bit, get us shared a little bit more. Because YouTube's going to be like, oh, there's actually engagement. Cool. Hey, do you want to watch these guys? One's kind of a retard, and then did I say that word? Excuse me. One's kind of a yeah. Well, yeah, we're gonna get canceled on this one. But either way, so talking about me, by the way. Um, and that other guy, that Matt guy, he's kind of smart. The yeah. So if you guys want to catch us on the social medias, you can. You can do that in places like the Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/battlebros.podcast. You can do that also on the Insta, over on Instagram at, yeah, there it goes, at battlebros_podcast. And you can also catch us on X, formerly Twitter, at battlebrospc. You can actually contact us via the instant messengers there. Leave all the comments and all types of cool stuff that you guys want to do. And yeah, we're here and ready for engagement. If, say, for example, you're running into some problems, you don't feel like you can call this, the hotline, you don't feel like anybody's listening to you, you can't get in contact with anybody, email us. We're monitoring the email every single day, so email us at battlebrospc@gmail.com. That is, again, battlebrospc@gmail.com. And we will get back to you as soon as we see that message. Please, 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 guys and gals, don't make a decision that is going to be permanent when you have options. Okay. Please don't make a decision that's permanent when you have options. We are here. If you don't feel like you, like I said, if you feel like you can't get in contact with anybody, please message us. We'll get back to you. And because we want to try and keep that statistic as low as possible. We don't want it to go from 22 to 24. So if you want to catch us on any other platforms, you can do that on all the audio platforms. You can catch us on Spotify, iHeart, Google, and a myriad of others. Also, if YouTube is not your primary format of watching videos anymore, you can catch us over on Rumble. You could go to rumble.com and just search in that little search bar, Battle Bros, all one word. Again, Battle Bros, all one word. And you will find us there. Other than that, I got nothing.
Cool. So before we wrap this show up, just want to say thanks to everybody for spending time with us on this Friday evening. I know that we're both kind of feeling the effects of seasonal allergies right now. My face is kind of just like a little bit bloated, and I'm just like, ugh. So I'm gonna go rack out here in a little while.
Oh,
But
yeah. Count Crudula.
Count Crudula sucks. So we want to say to everybody, thank you for stopping by to check out this show. If you checked us out other shows or watch, listen, or however you your choice of consumption of our content, we appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by to check out episode 072, our conversation on the historical significance of St. Paddy's Day. I want to leave you, if you're not familiar, with a traditional Irish blessing, and it goes like this. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. On that note, this has been episode 072 of the Battle Bros podcast with myself, Mac, and my illustrious co-host, Alamo, over here. Thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it, everybody. If you go out and celebrate St. Paddy's Day, if you're going to partake in the festivities, please do so responsibly. call a ride, call a ride sharing app. If you're going to drink, don't drink and drive. It's not worth it. All right. Don't hurt
Yar.
yourself. Don't hurt others. Don't get yourself in a lot of trouble. Okay. But remember those 4 tenets that we talked about: be tenacious, refuse to surrender, obliterate your obstacles, seek out help in a time of need. If you can remember those 4 things, you got a good chance of starting off on the right foot. So until we meet again, this has been the Battle Bros Podcast. We are signing off, and we will hopefully see you next week when we have our latest and greatest discussion. So happy St. Patty's Day, Slancha, and we'll see you next time.
Amen, amen, and amen. Battle Bros out.